I think this is the lowest number of SCP that we've ever reacted to besides 001, which is a bunch of different ones, you know? This one is SCP-003, and it's called a biological motherboard. We're gonna react to it today. This one is by SCP Explained. Make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too, guys. And let's get into this one.
Is there any greater computer on planet Earth than the human brain? That web of almost 200 billion neurons inside your skull gives you the equivalent memory space of over 1,000 1-terabyte hard drives.
Pretty good.
Sure, the human brain might not be able to process information at the speed of the average computer, but it can regulate the movement and functions of your entire body, all while using less energy than a light bulb. Yeah. That's right. Our brains are pretty impressive organic computers.
Too bad
but
we can't use
some
all of
stiff competition.
We only have a percentage that we can
not
use,
completely stiff.
Okay.
You'll see. Say hello to SCP-003, also referred to as the biological motherboard.
Very interesting.
Hearing that name, you would be right to assume that SCP-003 is a computer formed of organic components, as opposed to man-made microchips and circuit boards. But there is a little bit more to it than that. SCP-003 is actually composed of two distinct parts, referred to as SCP-003-1 and SCP-003-2, both related, but each with a separate origin. The former, 003-1, is the machine's motherboard, whereas your ordinary home computer or laptop might have a motherboard made out of fiberglass and copper. This one is far less conventional. So what is 003-1 actually made from? The answer is living tissue. Everything from hair and fingernails to chitin, which is a substance found in the exoskeletons of some invertebrate animals. All of these components, parts that may have once belonged to a living thing, are arranged in a configuration much like that of a computer's motherboard. It sounds like something plucked out of a film by John Carpenter or David Cronenberg, doesn't it? But how or why would someone ever construct something like this? Well, the answer to that isn't clear. So far, the only answers we have come from the SCP Foundation's extensive testing of the biological motherboard. According to researchers, SCP-003-1 predates even the very earliest modern circuits by several thousands of years, meaning that whoever built it was certainly ahead of their time. Also,
maybe alien.
The motherboard is alive. Wait, did we forget to mention that? SCP-003-1 has displayed at least a low level of sentience during testing by the Foundation. Not enough to be considered an active threat unless certain conditions make it dangerous. The second component of SCP-003 is 003-2, a stone tablet that 003-1 was attached to when it was first discovered. The surface of 003-2 has a number of runes carved into it. But these symbols don't match letters or characters from any known language. The runes on 003-2 are also known to regularly emit a pale, flickering pattern of light. Now, you're probably asking, how is a slab of stone able to light itself up? Well, that is because SCP-003-2 has an internal computer controlling it, and not one composed of organic parts like hair and fingernails. Somewhere within the stone is a non-biological computer, fueled by some unknown anomalous power source. The Foundation's researchers can't access the internal components of SCP-003-2 without running the high risk of damaging it, but as far as they can tell, whatever is running this bizarre machine has been slowly losing power for centuries. The biological motherboard is also known to emit measurable levels of heat, light, and radiations of an anomalous nature. So why would someone go to the trouble of creating a computer out of living parts in anomalous stone? And what is the purpose of the biological motherboard? The SCP Foundation considers it highly probable that the stone slab of 003-2 was actually created with the intention of keeping the motherboard component, 003-1, contained. Additionally, during testing, Foundation researchers have been able to extract partially complete data from SCP-003. This data seems to refer to some sort of potential catastrophe, either in the future or one that has already occurred, as a direct result of SCP-003-1. It would seem that 003-1 and 003-2 must stay combined in order to prevent what the Foundation would deem an LK-class restructuring event.
Wow.
How could the biological motherboard cause an event like this? It just sounds like a partially alive flesh circuit on a stone slab. It's when the temperature around SCP-003 drops below 35 degrees Celsius that things start to get really strange. From the minute they detect a decrease in temperature, both components of SCP-003 begin to react. The biological motherboard itself starts to grow, rapidly increasing its overall size. 003-1 fuels this growth state by absorbing any nearby matter, adding anything close enough to its fleshy mass. First, it will assimilate any inorganic material, everything from particles in the atmosphere on up. 003-1 transforms these new additions to itself into the same organic matter that makes up the biological motherboard, transforming metal or plastic into dead skin cells, hair, chitin, enamel, keratin, and other similar materials. This growth state increases until SCP-003 takes on a form in the shape of an ophiuroid, also known as a brittle star, an aquatic life form similar to a starfish, with 5 long, thin appendages protruding from a central body. In the case of SCP-003, this body appears to be the computer's central processing unit. In this new form, the biological motherboard will also begin to create sensory organs that will survey the area around it for more materials to assimilate. Only 003-2, the stone slab, is immune to being converted into biological matter. Next, the second phase of transformation occurs, and SCP-003-1 begins to absorb organic matter into its mass as well, living or otherwise. If you've ever seen The Blob, then you know what this looks like, and how horrifying it would be for any person unfortunate enough to be standing too close. During this stage, SCP-003 will attempt to copy the biology of a living organism it comes into contact with, and uses this template to try and lure others towards it. However, the biological motherboard appears to use a lot of processing power to analyze and assimilate organic matter, and this can actually diminish the speed at which it increases in size. So what happens to 003-2, the stone component of SCP-003, during all of this? When the biological motherboard is growing and changing form, melding with other organisms as its fleshy mass increases, does 003-2 power its transformation? No. In fact, it tries to prevent it. That's right.
It is a
the two components
device.
of SCP-003 do not work in tandem. They work against each other. As the biological motherboard starts to grow, the stone slab attached to it will emit concentrated bursts of radiation. These radioactive emissions have a counter effect on 003-1's ability to assimilate matter and increase its size, stopping the organic mass of flesh from growing and even reversing the process when the temperature is raised to over 100 degrees Celsius. What we have so far is a machine in 2 parts, one that grows and assimilates matter at lower temperatures, and the other that releases radiation to stop this happening. Naturally, the SCP Foundation counteracts the anomalous growing ability of 003-1 by keeping the biological motherboard in a heated containment environment, still attached to 003-2. Under no circumstances is the temperature of SCP-003's containment unit to drop below 35 degrees Celsius,
you don't want that.
And normally no living person is permitted to make any direct contact with the machine. However, in the event of an emergency resulting in a loss of power, Foundation staff are required to huddle skin to skin with the fleshy mass of the motherboard, in an attempt to keep it warm through their own body heat, much like how penguins huddle together for warmth. Of course, those unlucky members of personnel probably hope they can generate enough heat between them to keep 003-1 from starting to grow. Otherwise, they'll know they'll be the first that the biological motherboard will absorb. Should a member of personnel be chosen for this particularly unpleasant task of being on hand to keep 003 warm, then they will be made to submit for a full examination beforehand. No one can be allowed close to SCP-003 if they're carrying any bodily parasites like tapeworms or head lice. They would all be extra organisms for 003-1 to absorb. Foundation staff are also required to be decontaminated both before and after directly dealing with SCP-003. And of course, No member of the SCP Foundation is permitted to ever detach the biological motherboard from the stone component.
Sure.
Given that 003-2 is the only device capable of reducing and reversing SCP-003-1's growth, any changes in the pattern or color of its glowing ruins is to be reported to high-ranking members of the Foundation. There have been multiple incidents involving SCP-003 though, usually occurring when staff working in the Foundation's M03 Gloria research team attempt to push the boundaries of the device's anomalous properties. Their interest in the biological motherboard lies purely in seeing how the machine evolves when allowed to grow beyond its second brittle star stage. During one such incident, 003-1 was allowed to grow and restructure for just over 9 minutes, after which the containment area's temperature was lowered, and 003-2 released a massive continuous spike in radiation. Any of the new material that had been bonded to the biological motherboard dissolved, falling away and turning into a dusty residue which was then collected for testing. At this point, both 003-1 and 003-2 seemed to power down, with no detectable activity. The stone slab did not power back on until it was connected to an external power generator. When the same procedure was repeated, and 003-1 re-entered its growth state,
how are they powering
003-2's radiation appeared to be unable to stop the motherboard from increasing in mass. When it reached 4 times its original size by assimilating any and all matter it could reach, SCP-003 then began to change form in a way that had never been observed before, forming a protective shell around 003-1. The entire living machine breached containment into the observation area, grabbing M03 Gloria researchers and its appendages. Using these M03 Gloria members, it began adding to itself and forming a new body. As it assimilated the researchers, the biological motherboard rearranged its center mass. SCP-003 then took on the form of a 3-meter-tall female humanoid, with tentacles protruding from its newly formed hair and spine. Next, the part creature, part machine began to make indecipherable sounds, trying to communicate with researchers through these rudimentary vocalizations. Somehow, perhaps through information it had absorbed from the researchers in its grasp, SCP-003 wanted to speak. What happened next? An agent, sent on orders direct from the O5 Council, was dispatched to the containment area. According to Foundation records, the agent attempted to engage in conversation with SCP-003's new form, but any data about their exchange has been expunged. Luckily, this agent was able to restore power to SCP-003's stone component, returning the room temperature to the proper containment levels, which caused 003-1 to return to its normal state. The threat recontained, all 9 members of M03 Gloria were found to be unharmed, suffering no side effects from assimilation, other than a few cases of psychological trauma. Dr. Tilda Moose, the leader of M03 Gloria, was later interviewed by the Foundation. She claimed that SCP-003 had tried to talk to the researchers, connecting with them mentally in a crude, broken language that they couldn't understand. She ripped 3 of the researchers apart and put them back together unharmed. She doesn't understand human emotion or pain, or very much about how we experience the world. Yes, I would say the containment procedures are necessary. According to Dr. Moose, SCP-003 is some unknown alien entity, one without a clear understanding of humanity. It cannot understand pain or physical sensation, yet it is bent on remaking the world into a paradise. The whole effect felt like words of some kind. I believe she wanted to see what we could understand, so she could understand us. Dr. Moose said in her interview, she didn't have time to finish analyzing us. I don't know what would have happened if she had. Now check out SCP's...
Guys, this was so cool, man. I don't even know. It's almost like it wanted information, you know, which is almost every AI type scenario. That's kind of what this was reminiscent of, but very, very, very cool. SCP, man. SCP explained, you guys. Make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.